Hello everyone, my name is Jaime Garzon and I am an Assistant Extension Professor and Forage Educator at the University of Maine Cooperative Extension. Another important topic when we are talking about pasture management is about soil health. In other decades, when you speak about soil, usually the main reference about that was just nutrients. So how much potassium, how much calcium or phosphorus a soil has, and how can it pass that nutrient to the grass. That was the only approximation. Nowadays, we know that the soil and the pastures are playing a game that imply many factors, many players. And one of those examples we have here. Here you can see this like an homogeneous green biomass that we call pasture. But in here we have different species that are interacting with the soil. We have the dandelion, that is the forb, and the clovers. With clovers, it's important to consider that they, for example, are fixing nitrogen. It's a very important ecosystem service that these legumes are providing to our soil, because they literally are taking the nitrogen from the air and putting that into the soil in a free way. That nitrogen will focus later in the microorganisms' growth, and the thrive of these microorganisms will increase also the nutrient cycling of the soil. So you can see here that just by implying one species over the soil, we are taking advantage of 3 or 4 ecosystem services. On the other place, you can see over there that actually we have some flowers, some forbs that are growing. In this case, that is false dandelion, and because of that, because of the color, we are increasing another ecosystem service that are the benefit of pollinators. With the pollinators, we are talking about better reproduction of our plants, and they also are improving the quality, and of course another category of ecosystem services, that is the cultural way, improving the landscape. So in this case, just starting with the soil health and with the species that we have here, improving the amount and the diversification of microorganisms and species of forages as well, we are making all the cycle for improving the nutrients that are passing from the soil to the grasses and later to the animals. Another important aspect when we are talking about grazing now is how is the heights that you need to fulfill before your animals come to the pasture, or when you need to put them out. So when you start with the grazing, it's important that you comply to conditions. The first one is usually that the grass needs to be at least 12 inches height. As you can see here, this is almost 3 feet, so that is fine. But that characteristics will depend a lot about the weather, about the moisture of the soil, about what is happening with the management. So a physiological response that you can measure and you can have into account to know when you put your animals in is the seed heads of the grasses. Ideally, you need to see your pasture and have at least 30% of seed heads on your grasses. When you achieve that number, that means that almost all your grasses at that moment are just start producing the seed heads, and that is the better moment when the biomass productivity and the quality of the grass are matching. On the other side, you have now your animals on your pasture, and you now need to know how much time you will have it over there. For that one, it is important that you also have like a rule of thumb. Try to maintain your animals on your pasture until the moment that the grass reach 4 inches stubble height. It could be a little lower, going to 3 inches, going a little higher if we have having that year problems with drought and you need more shade and you need more cover on your residue. But if not, you can go for those 4 inches. At that moment is when you need to put your animals out, because in that way you are leaving biomass and photosynthetic tissue for the grass to even produce more food, increase the nutrients of the roots, and start growing again. By achieving these 4 inches, you are making that your next cut will be good and with also a good nutritive value for your animals. This is one of the tools that you can have in any of the NRCS county offices here in the state. This is called a grazing stick, and it's a very good tool for management because not only is designed for the New England region, it also has many information that you will use to know how much biomass your pasture is producing. First of all, it's important that we note that we have here like a rule in inches. So in this case, this is the way that we can measure how is the height of our pastures. So to know how much biomass your pasture is producing, you just need to go over there, stick the grazing stick, and measure how is approximately the height of your pasture. In this case, it's approximately 20 inches. Beside of that, the grazing stick is also giving some information graphically about how much should be the height of a grass to be grazed. Usually this will reach like a minimum, that is 12 inches that you can see there. This can be higher because it will depend on the physiology of the grass and of course the climate, what happened with the weather and everything else. And also it has this specific measure that is 4 inches. It's very important that you always consider this height because in here we are seeing how much is the stubble height that you need to leave on your pasture after the grazing. So in comparison, for example, we have here 2 different heights. In here that we suppose that was grazed, we can see here that it was reaching approximately 4 to 6 inches, approximately what is mentioned for the grazing stick. Another tool that we have here is these dots that we will have in our grazing stick. These dots are the way that we can measure how is the density of our grass, our pasture. To knowing how to do that, the way is you need to go to the pasture that is already grown. You need to put your pasture stick over there, like cover it with the grasses that you have over, taking them next to the grazing stick, and you need to see how many of those dots can you see over your pasture. At this moment, I'm just seeing 4 dots. So now that I have that information, I need to relate how much that density will relate with the height that I have on my pasture. I already measured that this has approximately 20 inches. If I subtract the 4 inches that I need to maintain in my pasture after the grazing, that will give us approximately 16 inches that will be available for our animals. Now, knowing that we have those inches and those dots, we just need to see how much is the formula that will be explained in the same grazing stick. So actually the estimation can go if you are seeing 0 to 1 dots, 1 to 2 dots, or 3 or more. And how is the numbers that the grazing stick is showing. In this case, is seeing, for example, that we have like a crop, a pasture with orchard grass and nitrogen fertilization. Depending on the dots, it will be different numbers. As you can see, if 0 of 1 dot, it will be 250 to 300. And this number is reducing if we see more of those dots. So actually, because if we are seeing more dots, that means that we are seeing less grass. If we go with other specific numbers that the grazing stick is giving to us, you will see that we have perennial grass, tall fescue with clovers, orchard grass, bluegrass, that is the Kentucky bluegrass, or even perennial ryegrass. Here you need just to fulfill in what approximately species do you have, and later you can see that the number depending on how many dots did you see. And later these numbers, just to recognize, is the amount of biomass in dry matter per inch of height. So in this case that we are having 16 inches of height, the situation with the dots that we will need to see here is just to multiply this number for the amount of inches that we have available for our animals. One of the important things that we need to think about when we are talking about grasses and forages management is about diversification. That concept is something kind of new from the last decades, and the idea is to have more than one species of grass, of legume or forb in our field. When you remember the history and having those old fields in other generations, the idea of the people was to have the same grass in the whole place. And actually at this moment you can see that in other states. But nowadays we know that if you have more than one grass, more than one species, you will increase the resilience and the adaptation of that pasture to the weather or to the climate. And as well, those interactions between species will also help the soil health, will help the microorganisms to thrive, and it will increase the amount of nutrients that will share with the soil and later with the animal. So for make an example of this diversification, we have this pasture here. In the same place here near to me, we can see almost 3 or 4 different species of forages. For example, here we have the orchard grass, very common grass that likes dry soils, good growth, good nutritive value. Next to there we have this one, that is the Timothy. I think this is the most common grass that you will see in our pastures. Very adaptive, very persistent, good nutritive value as well. On the back we can see here the smooth brown grass. This will represent, it will say, it's an indicator that we have a dry soil here. This is a grass that it would grow better with soils with very good drainage. And finally, we also have, not only with the grasses, we can also see legumes that are producing some ecosystem services to our place. So we have here, first for example, the red clover. The red clover, the advantage that we have with this one is the biomass that it will produce is better than what happened with the white clover. That is this one. Usually the white clover will grow by itself, has very good persistence, but the quality of that clover will be lower in comparison for the red clover. And of course, in the arounds, we have here, for example, these leaves. This, for example, dandelion. The dandelion is people think that it's a weed, but when we are talking about pasture management, we consider that a forb, because the animals will eat it and will love it. And actually it has a very good nutritive value as well. It will cover those places when the grass is not growing, and maybe they are going against some other weeds that are problematic and could have issues with the health of your animals or with the health of your pasture. When you need to choose what species of grass to have on your farm, I would recommend that you take into account 5 factors. The first one is the temperature that you will have on your fields, because here in Maine it's different if you need to choose something for the cold season, maybe spring, maybe fall, or if you are dealing with the summer slump. So in that case you will need a species that will be a warm season adapted. So in being that the case, you can go for the cool season, species like orchard grass, like smooth brown grass, like Kentucky bluegrass, or fescues even. Or if you are going in the part of the summer warm season species, you can go for the millets, the sorghum, the Sudan grasses, or even some legumes at the coping. That is one of the factors. The second factor we're talking about is about the moisture of the soil. It's not the same to have a place, a field that is well drained, to have another one that have bad drainage, that is wet, or that is very clayey with a lot of clays. Usually those factors will impact one species could thrive in comparison to others, or even to surpass the weeds. So if you are having a wet soil that you want to adapt, you know, in that case you can go with a Timothy, you can go with a fescue, or even you can go in warm season, you can go with a millet, or even in this case the red canary grass is another one for wet soils. If you are going with the dry soils, now you can go with orchard grasses, you can go with alfalfa as legume, or you can go with the smooth brown grass. It's important to note also that there is a couple of species of grasses that actually are adapted to both situations. And in Maine, we have that opportunity with the Timothy and with the fescues. So usually when you have, maybe it's wet one year, but it's very dry on the next year, maybe a Timothy or a meadow fescue could be a better choice. The third factor that we're talking about now is the fertilization, how much nutrients your soil have. To know that, the first thing I will recommend is just to do an appropriate soil test. By doing a soil test, you will need some tools, but you can go with even a bucket and a shovel. With that, take some samples, following some rules, put that sample in a box and send it to a laboratory to make an appropriate soil test. They will return that test with the results, and in there you will see how much concentration of nutrients and other factors of the soil that are important to consider. Amount of nitrogen, of organic matter, pH, phosphorus, potassium, and other more complex variables, for example, as the cationic capacity exchange. For our general management, we need is the main concentration with those three first nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Maybe calcium and magnesium if you need to look about acidity, pH, and organic matter. The fourth factor that we have here is what happened with our marketing. With the marketing, and I'm referring is what seeds are available or what species are available near to your farm. In that way, it happened, for example, here in Maine, that you are looking for a fescue for your pastures, but the main thing that you will find is tall fescue. That is not the same as meadow fescue. So if you are having one of the other, you need to take some care and some specific cautions with the pasture that you will manage. And of course, with the marketing, I'm also referring with the management. In that case, that you need specific implements for the seeding, for the preparation of the soil. And our last one is pH. You will see that actually pH could be inside of the fertilization or nutrient management, but actually pH, it has their own category. It's because not only is how it will impact the grass that you have, but it's also how it will impact the weeds and other kind of plant species that you will have around. So usually when we are talking about grasses and pasture management, we are trying to have that magical number of 5.5. Everything that is below 5.5 will be an issue when we are talking about pastures, because the amount of aluminum that we will have in our soils will be too much, and actually that will impact the growth and the functioning of the roots of any grass that you have over there. When we are after the 5.5 going upper 5.5, other minerals in the soil will start catching and fixing that aluminum. So actually the aluminum intoxication, it will reduce it if you are going up and up with your pH. The situation is many grasses are adapted to that 5.5, but many weeds are adapted to that as well. So if you are going up of that 5.5, reaching 6, 6.5, or even 7, The amount of weeds will be more controlled because in that environment the grasses will grow faster and stronger. It will cover the weeds and it will kill them in the short or middle term. Besides, when we are talking about 6 of pH, we are also stimulating the growth of legumes because those legumes need an appropriate pH, not an acid as grasses, because they need to do the fixation of nitrogen. And because of that, they need to do some physiological changes of the roots that need a more affordable pH than 5.5. So going up of 6, reaching 6.5 or going to 7 is like the appropriate range in where you can manage the pH on your soil.
This video was brought to you by the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Grazing Behavior Lab and the Maine New Farmers Project. We would like to extend a special thank you to livestock forage educator Dr. Jaime Garzon. And if you would like to learn more about Jaime, join in to the upcoming 22nd episode of the Maine Farmcast on October 2nd, 2024. And once again,